Hey everyone, and in today's episode, we are going to be discussing gold versus Bitcoin versus quantum computers. Which is superior? Let's dive in and find out in today's episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Quantum Resistant Ledger channel, the place where you come for the crypto and stay for the quantum. I'm really excited about today's episode. With me is our Director of Outreach at the QRL, Michael Strike. It's good to have you here, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me back again. Today we're going to talk about some things that I'm passionate about. Blockchain, Bitcoin, precious metals, quantum, all that fun stuff, how it ties together and what that all looks like and what the future may hold. We'll find out.
Awesome. Sounds great. What we're going to do first is I want to kind of go in an order a little bit, but where I'd like to do starting point is I want to go back a little bit in history. Obviously, you have the longest standing of those three being gold. Since 2009, you have Bitcoin, and then right now it's being worked on in the quantum realm and beyond. You have that, but as a starting point, what I would like to do as a framework for our conversation is I want to go back in time, centuries and centuries ago, whether we're talking Roman Empire or the 13th century in England, or we talk about the gold standard, wherever we lead to in that conversation. Going back in time, what initially gives gold value, and then we can lead the conversation from here.
I would like to go back in time about 3 days ago and just put some things into stable coins. Joking aside, gold. What gives gold its value? So we all know that gold has this long history of being a symbol of power, health, wealth, prosperity. In fact, I used to be a precious metal stacker, and I followed the teachings of Mike Maloney and Peter Schiff, one of which I don't pay as quite much attention to anymore. The audience probably knows which one. But we used to have a saying, gold is the currency of kings, silver is the currency of gentlemen, and debt is the currency of peasants. Nowadays, I kind of almost wonder if that's true if you're talking about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Dogecoin, perhaps. I don't know. Future will tell. But what makes gold valuable? So gold's like it's the most malleable element, right? An ounce of gold can be stretched for something like 30 or 50 miles. It's corrosion resistant. It's a great, amazing thermal and electrical conductor. There's enough of it that can be made into coins, but not enough so that everyone gets multiple coins or possibly even one. But besides all of that, we have what's called scarcity. Now, despite what alchemists and flat earthers might say, I still believe that it can't be conjured out of thin air. And I think that scarcity is probably its most important quality. All the gold mine that has ever been mined basically still exists. But the problem is it's immobile and it's stored. And with the movement of the electronic and digital age, the whole thing has been papered over so much that it would be very, very difficult to put in completely accurate price on what an ounce of gold actually is, because it's been papered over so much by the financial system. So yeah, I mean, and it takes a lot of work, obviously, to mine it out of the ground. In fact, there's this old joke that if there were aliens watching from above, they wonder why they looking down and wondering why we're mining it up out of the ground and then putting it back in the ground. Joking aside, I hope does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of. And then I think this leads through to a part where we're going to be talking about with Bitcoin. Obviously, Gold 2.0 is some opponents of Bitcoin say that Bitcoin does not have intrinsic value. So I'd like to dive into this. Maybe we start with like definition first, and then we can kind of talk about the comparisons of one versus the other, and also just not to say if one is amazing, the other one can't be. Talk about some of the similarities and then some of the add-ons of what makes it a stepped up version of that. So. Let's first talk about the intrinsic value part. I know we talked about this before off camera, but I think this would be a good place for this part.
Absolutely. So let's define what does intrinsic mean. If you look it up in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, it's listed as belonging to the essential nature or constitution of something or of a thing. For example, one of the sun's intrinsic value is it gives off light, which maintains all the life. That's pretty high intrinsic value. Gold has intrinsic values that we've talked about. For the silver bugs, I'll give them some credit. That has high industrial applications. And honestly, I've always had a precious or a fondness for precious metals. In fact, I do like the fact that you can hold them in your hand. The problem is here the biggest problem with precious metals is you just can't send them to the other side of the world in 6 minutes. That's unless Musk can drop the price of spaceflight as much as he's raised the price of Dogecoin, right? But what is intrinsic value? What intrinsic value does Bitcoin bring? So that's really what the question is. We talked about precious metal intrinsic values, and we've talked about what they can do that other things cannot do. Bitcoin and blockchain bring trust. They bring that's one of the most fundamental intrinsic values behind Bitcoin. You can trust that that there are not more Bitcoins being minted than what the protocol allows. You can trust that you're using the same open source code, the same open source codes that everyone else is. And if you break the rules outside of what the protocol allows, your transactions will be disregarded by the network, right? So essentially, all of the flaws of human governments that's repeated itself throughout history is we're watching it take place. That it's being replaced by code. And this has never been possible before. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have this amazing open source movement. We didn't have the telecommunications. We didn't have the ability to talk around the world in real time. That's not always existed while money has existed. So for the first time, we're all under the same set of rules. So that's really where trust comes in. So when you were growing up, but mom and dad may have had a favorite, but not Bitcoin, not you, Ryan, not you. I'm talking to the audience. Yeah. Everybody loves you. So yeah, gold does have tremendous value, but at the end of the day, it's immobile and it's expensive to move. And when I'm talking about expensive, guys, I'm not talking about Ethereum gas fees expensive. I'm talking about really, really expensive, right?
Yeah.
You have to ships and
you got to think of even edge cases of someone is fleeing from Guatemala and Argentina and they're about to get on a plane. Is it going to be easier for them to have a hardware wallet or a mnemonic phrase in their head and flee? Or if it's in a less extreme situation where you're just going from one place to another, whereas if you are shipping gold, the portability, it's completely different, night and day.
You brought this up, so think about this. If you were a refugee, if you were fleeing a country, if you were fleeing, out of fear for your life or for whatever reason, you could essentially memorize 24 words, that mnemonic phrase, and carry nearly infinite amount of wealth with you in your head. Yeah. You would do what you would do. It's mnemonic learning. I forgot the exact phrase of it, but
you have you can do it a few ways, but one could be you have like a mind cascade where you kind of you paint it to a story. People do it different ways depending on how you learn, but that is one of the main ways they go about it. Is that what you're going to say? Kind of.
Yes, exactly. Because our brain. Most people are visual learners, and our brain stores. It's very good at storing stories, but it's not as good as building a schema for something that are just random abstract things. But if you can put them into something coherent, you could cross borders with $1 trillion just stuck right here, stored biochemically, right? And to me, that's never been possible before. That's amazing.
Yeah, the term is a memory palace, but you can call it whatever. Okay. Yeah, I think so. No, keep going though.
All right, so you're with me so far. So back to gold. Gold's trustworthy, right? Kinda. Bitcoin's trust of being compromised is really a lot less. There's more trust in Bitcoin than there is in gold, and I'll explain why. First of all, if gold were completely trustworthy, there'd be no reason to issue them serial numbers or stamp where it came from, and to package it up. There'd be no reason to keep track. I mean, what's a serial number really even? I'm going to go online and I'm going to cross-reference the serial number. I mean, all I know is that what I'm holding in my hand is stamped with that serial number. Don't get me wrong. Some mints, like Royal Canadian Mint, one of my favorites, has gotten really good creating intricate coins and shading and stuff like that. That with silver, that they've done a fantastic job. But when it comes to gold pretty much always looks the same, and it's really hard to tell. You might remember the New York scandal from years ago. I think I've got a link here. I'm going to share my screen. 1 second. Let me know when you can see it. Can you see this?
Yeah, we can all see it now.
All right, this is something that's kind of stuck in my memory here. This is, if you look here, there was New York City, and what you had was counterfeit gold being replaced by tungsten bars about 11 years ago. And the reason they use tungsten is it's close to the same weight and the same density. And these were being circulated. This was being circulated by reputable gold dealers. And I remember thinking about that at the time. It's like, I'm trying to put my wealth somewhere. It's like, what is the most, not that I had much 10 years ago, barely had anything, but I want to put something that I can trust. Okay, gold. Well, then I realized that it's like, now I can't even trust gold because these are reputable dealers, and somehow, they ended up being like 80% tungsten, and tungsten's very close to gold in mass and weight. So no one, nobody realized it for a while. So yeah, I think that about covers that.
Yeah, no, that covers that well. And I think we're going to probably do this a little bit more of a deep dive in an upcoming episode or two, as far as like market capitalization, if we're looking at gold or Bitcoin. But as of now, you have Bitcoin currently, I know it's fluctuating up or down. It's a bit under 1 trillion, about 10x that. You have the whole gold market cap total. Where I kind of want to move into now, we've been covering, gold and Bitcoin a little bit, and what makes, what differentiates between the two. What I want to do now is I want to add quantum computers and quantum computing to the equation. You have one that's been around for a very long time. You have one that is, a dozen years since Satoshi had the first, Genesis block, and that's led up to 2021. And like now moving forward, what if Bitcoin, let's say, I don't know at what point, I think, this is my personal opinion, I think it keeps moving up, closer and closer to getting towards, gold's market cap, and then exceeding that. I'm not a mind reader. Obviously, we don't know the timetable on that. But as that keeps moving forward, and as that market capitalization gets higher, there's going to be more and more reason that you want there to be no security flaws and vulnerabilities. Obviously, it has not been attacked to this point, but quantum computing in the future, what's capable, or what people are capable of doing today, it's going to change in 5 years. It's going to change even more so in 10 years. I'd like to bring in the quantum resistant ledger into our conversation, and just quantum computers in general. How does QRL tie into this whole conversation that we've been having about gold, Bitcoin, quantum computers, where stuff is happening right now, whether it be IBMs of the world, the Honeywells, whether it be governments, tons of money getting put into the space, venture capital money being poured in each week, each month. It seems like every couple of days, it seems, and where we're going moving forward. But how does a QRL tie into this? And I know this is probably a few questions broken into one, but let's use this as a starting point with this question.
Yeah, so we talked about some of this content on some of the other previous
videos,
right?
Yeah.
And I think our viewing audience has heard me use the iceberg analogy of hundreds of millions of dollars that we know about that's being pumped into this. So you have to ask yourself a question. The first question that I think should be asked is, do you believe that cryptocurrencies are sustainable, right? In general, are they sustainable? Are they going to be around in 10 years? Okay. Then look at what's being done in quantum and understand that with the amount of capital that's being pushed into it, are you seeing just the tip of the iceberg? Are you actually seeing the big picture? I definitely argue the latter because of the threat that quantum can pose to security. But let's talk about how QRL all ties into this. 1 trillion. market caps, $1 trillion for Bitcoin, just under $2 trillion for the entire crypto space, right? Obviously, that's an enormous amount of capital, not as much as it was 2-3 days ago. Still an enormous amount of capital. But here's what my opinion is. This is long term. This is 10 years out. Gold's going to devour fiat, but Bitcoin will eventually devour both fiat and gold. But at the end of the day, quantum trumps all of it. And let me explain why I'm saying that. You have to ask yourself, I'm sure there's people in our audience that understand this topic probably better than I do. Is you have to ask yourself what money really is, and it sounds like a basic question, but it's really not. It should. There's certain qualities. First off, I'm going to give 4 right up front. It should be durable. You don't want your money disintegrating and going through the dryer, right? Actually, fiat, that would be fiat, which isn't money. Maloney's going to zing me for that one.
I know where you're going. Keep going to the other main ones. Yeah.
Durable. It should be recognizable. Okay. It should be stable, and it should be divisible. Okay. Those are 4 great properties of money. But there's more. There's actually 3 more at least 3 more that I can think of. First of all, fungible. Coins in the U.S. haven't been fungible since 1965. And what fungibility means is essentially that if you have a quarter and if I have a quarter, that quarter should be worth the same thing. So up until 1964, all dimes and U.S. quarters were made out of 90% silver, which means that your 1964 and previous quarters would be worth several dollars. I think it's like between around $4, something like that right now, which you could sell to a numismatic dealer, and they would pay you for it. So that's in accordance with what's called Gresham's law. All pre 1965 coins are now they've been hoarded for decades. So any of the listeners out there, go through your, just out of curiosity, go through your change jar or your pocket. I would be really surprised if you found a dime or a quarter before 1965, not nickels, dimes and quarters. So it has to be fungible. Fiat's not fungible. Okay. It hasn't really been since 65. It's not a store of value. Real money should be a store of value. I should be able to hold it and know that it's still going to be worth something, in the coming years. So I guess fiat makes 6 of those, but where Bitcoin and blockchain really comes in is portability. Okay, so Bitcoin has all of those previous aforementioned qualities of money that I've talked about, but it also has tremendous portability. I can send it across the world in minutes, assuming Coinbase is up and the price isn't skyrocketing.
Yeah.
Right. But Bitcoin meets all those criteria, and that's why it makes it superior money. So how does quantum tie into this? So there's this quantum threat, which there's this quantum threat to the addressing scheme of Bitcoin and all the other altcoins that use asymmetric encryption during their addressing scheme. And this addressing scheme is based on factorization, and it's essentially the scaffold. It's not a subroutine of the code. It's the fundamental. It's the scaffolding for the cryptocurrency. It's not just something that could be forklift in and forklift out. It's not a modular piece, and that's where our project comes in. We provide essentially, I would say, blockchain quantum insurance. It's an insurance policy, right? So if you have QRL, we're based on NIST's hash-based, recommended hash-based signature scheme. It's hash-based. It's not encrypted. It uses hashes. So, and hashes are known to be SHA-256, and other iterations of hashes are being known to be quantum secure. So that, and our developing ecosystem with enQlave that we're putting together, which we're working on being able to post-quantum secure and essentially retrofit other blockchains like Ethereum with post-quantum security. That's where QRL steps in.
Awesome. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing 2 things now. First off, in a minute or 2, we're going to open it up to AMA. So if you have some questions in mind, whether it's something on the topic that we're talking about right now with the whole Bitcoin versus gold versus quantum computers debate, or if it's more of a particular QRL question that you might have, throw those into the chat. We'll be hopping in there in a minute. And one other fun thing in the meantime, if you have your screenshot capability right now, what I'm doing is I'm throwing up a mnemonic phrase. And if you want to, if the first person that goes to this mnemonic phrase right now, we just dropped a little bit of Quanta in this QRL address. So I'll leave it on the screen for about 5 to 10 more seconds. So Strike and I will smile.
I need to throw that one in first, Ryan. Otherwise, no one would listen to me.
Yeah, and so if anyone wants to grab that, the first one to pull this mnemonic phrase real quick here is the taker of this. And Strike, while we're waiting for a couple AMA questions to come through here, what I would like to do is, can you give some of the viewers at home, I know some of you that are viewing this are familiar with the project, you've been around the block for a little while, but for some people that are maybe a little bit newer to the channel, or they've maybe heard about QRL through a friend, where's a good starting place for them to kind of dip their feet in the little water a little bit to learn a little bit more about the quantum threat, or just even go into the deep end a little bit if we're talking about RSA, different ways that a quantum threat can potentially impact them down the road. But where's a good starting place or two? And then after that, we'll dive and open it up to AMA.
So QRL is one of the innovative leaders in the space at this intersection of blockchain and quantum, right? I mean, these are two pretty niche markets. So there is a little bit of advantage, and there's not a ton of material as to where these two intersect. In fact, I think there's really only just even just a few books on the topic. So what I would recommend is definitely go to our YouTube channel. There's a lot of content that we've produced on there. We break down the fundamental threat from generating a 256-bit random number for your Bitcoin public address using elliptical curve multiplication to get to your private address, and then hashing that in order to get to your private address, elliptical curve to public address, and then to your Bitcoin address. Now that last part being of the hashing is secure, but the part of where you go from private key and then use elliptical curve multiplication to get to your public key, that's all explained in the video, and how that's based on prime number factorization, elliptical curve multiplication. And I would recommend going there. There's also a lot of information. I think info docs. Which one is it? docs.theqrl.org. And I mean, if you want to do more live research or more in real time, jump into our Discord channel. Should be a link at the end of this YouTube video. So there's a lot of quantum and blockchain passionate people in there that I'm sure are watching right now. So.
Yeah, and we'll open it up. I don't know, today's AMA is a little bit different in that there's not like a strong ask as far as questions on the topic, whereas last week's was a little bit more, and I think our upcoming video on with consensus protocols is going to have a lot more. But Strike, how about we hop in the chat just to see, we'll see if there's any at the moment.
Stephen McGee says,
I'll pop it up once you read it.
Yeah, I think it said, I've never seen anyone restore their gold from from a seed phrase, right? And that's a real thing because the executive order, there's a number of it when the United States actually confiscated all gold hoarding, right, at the time. Yeah, you can't restore gold from a seed phrase. Can you talk more about enQlave and how that all will work with Uniswap? Yeah, so I can talk a little bit. I can't speak for the developers. enQlave, that's by Stephen S.
Yeah, enQlave.io, still stuff's being worked on. But yeah, if you want to dive into that for a second, Strike, briefly.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the website. So to talk a little bit more, essentially what it's going to do is going to be able to take Ethereum and a subset of ERC 20 tokens and being able to XMSS wrap them, store them on chain via a smart contract and Oracle on the Ethereum blockchain. So it'll be it's kind of like it's a vault essentially that you're wrapping your Ethereum around, and you can store it. You'll be able to store that as being quantum secure and a subset of ERC20s, like I said. Now the tech itself isn't specific to just Ethereum. What is it? In theory, it could be applied to any blockchain that has smart contract capability. So I hope that answers that question.
Good question, Stephen. We got one other one down here on the role of native tokens playing a post-quantum securing of other blockchains. How about that one, Strike, or is that?
Where is it?
I'll pop it up right here and see if it's.
Can you explain what, if any, will the role QRL native plays in the well? Will the role QRL native coin, right, play in post-quantum security of other blockchains? So QRL being a native coin, not like a token on like in Ethereum, is its own blockchain. So if we have our own mainnet, our own nodes, our own blockchain that's been running for years now. That coin by itself acts as a quantum insurance hedge. With the difference, in contrast to enQlave is post-quantum securing Ethereum. The QRL native coin is like in a quantum insurance policy.
Yeah. Thanks, Strike. Good one. I just saw this kind of more of a fun one. Craig posted if I'm guessing Peter Schiff wasn't available as a guest speaker for today's show. Actually, we'd love to have him on the show, Peter. If you're out there watching, if you're not busy, keeping your gold safe. We'd like to probably talk to his son a little bit more about some stuff. But
Spencer. Yeah,
I'd love to have a conversation with either of them in any realm. So
Spencer, if you're listening, go ahead and ping us.
Yeah, no, that's good. If anyone else
get on board.
Yeah, if anybody else has any questions, we're gonna probably maybe do one more. We'll see. We'll give it another minute or so to see if anybody else. Here, let's see. We got one more at the bottom.
Let's do one by Stephen.
Yeah, I'll pop this one up real quick. Yeah, how about can you specifically, in layman terms, explain why the scheme of QRL will survive post quantum computing as opposed to ECC? So dive into this one just briefly, Strike, just to, and then maybe we'll do one more after this. It's a good question.
Simply.
Yeah.
Elliptical Bitcoin is based on elliptical curve multiplication, which is vulnerable to Shor's algorithm by a quantum computer. So because it's elliptical curve, that's vulnerable to quantum computers. It's really that simple. A sufficiently powerful quantum computer would be able to take a public key and generate a private key.
Yeah,
that's where the risk is.
Yeah, and for those of you that that's it's way over my head. Picture public key, private key, able to put the two together. Let's see, we got a few from the Discord community here. Strike, do you want to dive into? We got two here. Let's pop this one up here. What is the status of the ephemeral messaging system? Is this one we can dive into? I know this has to do with the development team as well. Can we say anything on this?
Might be able to. I'm going to finish the last part of that last question because it has to contrast Bitcoin against QRL. The difference is that QRL is based on a hash-based signature scheme.
Yeah.
It uses hashes, not encryption. Now, I understand if you haven't studied, a lot of people haven't studied cryptography, that those can be very confusing terms. But essentially, what a hash is you give X amount of input, it gets scrambled, and then you get a deterministic output. So, but if you change one simple bit or one simple byte on the input, you get a completely different result as a hash. And it's very, very difficult to take that hash, classically and quantumly. I think it's made up a word. It's very difficult classically and post-quantum to be able to take that hash and get back to the original input values. It just there's no way. Humankind just does not know how to do that. So Go ahead. I hope that
Perfect. There's two that kind of tie together here on ephemeral messaging. We got one from 45A, good question, and then Vessie's got one too. Let's pull up this one first, and then I'll just read out the other. So the first one here being, what's the status of the ephemeral messaging system? And then just to be able to answer it, two birds, one stone. The one after that is, can you share anything about some of the potential use cases of the ephemeral messaging layer? So whichever of these you kind of want to just touch on briefly here to maybe wrap the answer together for both these.
Yeah, let's talk about EMS. I don't have the developer's latest update on that. For latest updates, probably Discord under the development section is a good place to find the latest update. Essentially, what EMS is going to be is it's going to be a quantum secure platform for which other third parties are going to be able to build on top of in order to be able to do what they want. So what you do is you use the QRL native chain basically to prove identities. And then you'd be able to hand those identities off to a third party and have them be able to communicate like peer-to-peer. So, and for example, an application could use the QRL network to verify two people, quantum securely verify two people are who they say they are. Right? It would do that asymmetrically through the keys, right? And then hand off that communication to peer-to-peer communication. Then they can just talk to themselves once they trust each other. Now, this can be text, this could be video. We still want to do things like baselining the amount of video, but it's going to be it's going to be symmetric end-to-end, peer-to-peer. So we're expecting positive results on that. But it's kind of like how in layman's terms, right? If it in like a smartphone is what you build applications on top of, you'll be able to build on top of EMS. Okay, so you'll be able to use that and develop your own code for it in order to create post-quantum secure communications. It might even go beyond communications. I mean, we have some I have use cases in mind,
and there's a few that we probably haven't even thought of yet.
Right.
And there's a lot of possibilities.
EMS is basically the quantum secure solution that is looking for quantum problems.
Yeah. And the second question on ephemeral messaging is this: is there anything else that needs to be brought on here? Share anything about some of the use case? Yeah, this ties right to it.
Quantum secure chat, quantum secure video, any type of symmetric communication. In other words, any type of encrypted communication. Anything can be exchanged back and forth once identities have been confirmed through EMS.
Yep. I'm just showing this mnemonic phrase once more. I'm sure it's already been grabbed by one of you QRLers out there, but I just wanted to pop it up there on the screen for 3 more seconds while we wait and see if we have maybe one more question. But I think
probably already gone.
Okay.
Somebody probably swooped it up.
Yep. Let's see here. I'm just double checking. I'm seeing a couple through.
Well, we have one of my idols on here. I'm gonna have to take this one.
Okay, the last one, the
Mr. Tesla.
Okay, well, there are maybe one or two more questions to go. I'll pop it up right here for you. Any updates on privacy features for QRL? And then we have one more underneath that. Maybe that'll be a good wrap. But touch on this one just a little bit, maybe for 30 to 60 seconds, strike.
Sure. So privacy features are an ongoing discussion within the team. There's pros and cons to both of them. On one hand, you have certain exchanges that won't list privacy coins out of regulatory concerns. But on the other hand, you have almost complete financial sovereignty, right? Almost complete anonymity, and financial sovereignty. And to make that post-quantum secure, what's missing from that recipe? I can't think of anything as far as the sovereignty, the security, and the anonymity, which are tenets of blockchain and crypto, right? So it's under consideration. I don't know if I don't think a decision's been made yet. I don't think it'll be in this next fork. Um,
Yeah.
but you know, I still think we're still early in developing this project. We've got lots of runway left.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future.
Thanks. Yeah. And POS transactions per second estimate, is that one that?
Don't know.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah, I think.
I just do not know.
Yeah. If any last questions, we're gonna probably be wrapping up in a second. If anyone has any last ones, feel free to throw them in there real quick. If you haven't done so already, make sure that you hit that subscribe button below. That way, each week, whether myself and Michael are coming out with a live video, such as today's, or if we're coming out with other video content that is scheduled, whether we're doing it weekly, bi-weekly, we have some guests when we have them coming on. You'll be first to be notified about it if you subscribe, if you haven't already done so. And you're just the first to hear about our content coming out from the QRL. So make sure you do that. And we'll just check real quick. I think we answered a lot of the questions really good. Strike. It was good to chat about gold versus Bitcoin versus quantum computers. I know there's a lot of different with this conversation today. There's a lot of different lanes, and you could talk about the gold aspect with myself, you members of our community for a couple hours on each one of those individually. So talking about them together within video form and keeping it in line it's a bit tricky. I know we haven't been able to cover everything, but I feel like the differentiating parts and the added components of gold 2.0 and then moving into where QRL ties into it, moving forward with quantum computing. It was nice to be able to discuss it a little bit in today's episode. So Strike, thanks for chatting on that. For everyone watching, make sure that you tune in next week. We're going to have an exciting episode coming up on consensus protocols. And from myself and Michael, we appreciate you taking some time out of your day to watch this, whether you're watching this now or later in the day, whatever time it is for you in the world. And myself and Michael will see you in the next episode. And lastly, make sure to keep those digital assets secure. And from myself and the QRL team, have a great rest of the day.